Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the OJ podcast. Today we're interviewing my good friend Randy and Lewis, right?
Yep.
Sorry. So
But
yeah.
you should say it just like that. My good friend Randy Lewis, right?
Yeah, nice. I mean, we could just do that. We could just keep this going.
I think it's funny.
This is the take. Okay, perfect. It's because when I put you into my phone, it was Randy Michael's friend.
Yeah.
And the
Or
only
like Randy Michael or something.
yeah, and the only I'm not gonna tell people how else I remember that your last name was Lewis, but there's another way. But for security concerns, we will not talk about it. All
All
right.
right.
So yeah, but welcome to the show, guys. So this is my friend Randy. I've known Randy for about how long have I known you, Randy? About like 5 years,
More than that.
more
Because I
than
think I
that.
met you sophomore year of college. So
Wow,
6,
that's crazy.
8, 9, 7,
Yeah.
something like that.
And at the time I met Randy, here's a fun fact: Randy was the only person I knew who could kill everybody else at Super Smash Bros. Using only his feet.
Yeah,
That
that's accurate.
actually, before we start any other questions, I think we should start with that, Randy. Would you like to share a little bit about how that happened?
Yeah, about the foot thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so the foot thing is really a story that starts with my hands. And I could go on about it for hours, but I will try to keep it as short as possible. But keeping it as short as possible is going to make me sound very crazy. And I'm aware that it makes me sound very crazy, but I swear that I'm not crazy, or at least I don't think I am
Yeah.
at a conscious level, at least. But yeah, basically it started with a long running repetitive stress injury in my hands that got out of hand, no pun intended. And threatened to take over my life, basically. And then one day, somewhat mysteriously, disappeared. Um, and basically, what happened was about freshman year of college, I was using the computer a lot. It started to hurt the backs of my hands when I was using the computer. I made ergonomic adjustments. I went to the doctor. I went to physical therapists, but that was just kind of like the beginning of my problems. And then my problems went up exponentially.
Yeah.
And I just had like an absurd progression. Like it just got worse. And I would go to doctors and they had no idea what was wrong. And it would hurt more with less use of the computer. And it got worse and worse. And after my first internship after freshman year, I was really injured. So at that point, I quit my internship early and I got a foot mouse and speech recognition so that
This
I
is
could
where it
use a
gets
computer
good.
without my hands. Yeah, this is where it really starts. And I used that, and then my hands didn't hurt anymore actively. But then every time I would try to go back to using the computer with my hands, they'd like immediately start hurting. So it was like, they weren't actively in pain when I wasn't using them, but it like the underlying whatever it was didn't get fixed. Um, and then I used the foot mouse so much I gave myself knee problems. I got a head mouse and gave myself neck problems. I got a mouth mouse and gave myself chin problems in a very similar and analogous exponential and medically unexplained way. And it got so bad that this like basically went on the entire time I was in college. And it got so bad that after graduating college, I did an internship with your brother, Michael. And Michael and I did the internship, but only Michael used the computer. And I just talked to him the whole time because
He
that was
was
like literally practically the only way I could use the computer at that point.
he was your scribe.
Yeah, my scribe and my collaborator, to be fair. Um, and I'm an engineer, so like, I basically have to use the computer to do my job. It was so bad that I almost dropped out of college, almost quit engineering, and almost became a lifeguard for the rest of my life.
Dang.
And then after graduating, I was like applying for jobs, gonna get a job, not gonna be able to do a job, I knew. Um, but I was applying anyway, just because, like, I don't know. I was like, maybe it'll work out, and
Yeah.
trying to get better. So trying a bunch of things. And at this point, I've probably seen like 30 doctors or something, or doctors or things along those lines, medical professionals. And eventually I just started Googling crazy bad repetitive stress hand problems. Like, I was like, someone must have had this problem before. And I did find some people on the internet. I think I had found it previously, but dismissed it, that were like, oh, your hand problems are psychosomatic. And like, there's no physical cause for them. And like, the cause is mental. And my first reaction to that was like, that sounds like bullshit. I want something that's actually going to fix my problem. But my mom actually ended up being the one who really saved me in a way, because she went on a trip for a week and she came back. And then after that, during that trip, like the time away from me, because at this point I was living at home after graduating, she was like, Randy, I think your hand problems are psychosomatic. And that was kind of an uncomfortable conversation.
Thanks a lot, Mom. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, actually, thank you, because, you know, spoiler alert, the ending, it ended up in curing me in the end. But at the time, I don't know, the conversation was like, I was like, yeah, it would be great if they were psychosomatic. I hope that they are, but I don't think that they are.
Yeah.
But then she just gave me all the reasons that she thought they were. And then I was like, you know what, this merits further investigation. So I investigated it more on the internet. I found a community of people with similar mysterious afflictions that said that they had then been cured by like basically reading the forum and then ignoring their problem. And then I did that. And then my hands got better in like primarily like a week, but like really like a month to get totally better. And then since then, I also recovered in the same way from pain in like my knees and my back that was nowhere near as life damaging, but like similar. Like one time I was getting knee pain from running, but I didn't believe that it was, at that point, I believed that it was psychosomatic. So I just ignored it, and it literally got worse and worse and worse. And then one day it just disappeared. It was like super weird. I almost gave up actually on that one.
Wow.
And then, oh yeah, also the reason we're talking about this is because I learned to play video games with my feet in college. And I did make a YouTube video of me playing with kind of my feet on the controller and this like cardboard apparatus that I made to hold the controller and play. Because controllers are not really designed for feet.
That's hilarious. You think we could dig that video up and put some of that in a clip in this video?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm gonna definitely do that. For the people listening, you're gonna have to look it up on YouTube. But for the people watching on our YouTube, you're gonna get to watch Randy playing with his feet, playing video games.
It's called Super Smash with Feet 5 DDD versus Lucas.
I bet that has like, does it have like 5 million views?
Nah, not that many. It has like 10,000, but that was cool.
Okay, that's still more than any of my videos ever got. So
same, yeah.
That's amazing. You
can it blew up a little bit when we put it on. Or some actually not us. Someone put it on Super Smash Brothers Reddit, and then my roommate found it. That he didn't know that I had posted it. He found it on Super Smash Bros. Reddit, and then he knew it was me because he had seen me playing. Dude, and then he was like, "Well, you're on Reddit."
I wonder if you'd ever be in a situation where it's like someone's like, "I recognize those feet." It's like, they won't recognize your face, but they'll be like, "Are you this Super Smash Brother foot player?"
I deliberately didn't show my face at the time because I was like, what if it becomes super famous and I don't want to be famous? So I made an anonymous YouTube account and called it Smash with Feet, and then hilarious. Like only showed my feet. But now I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. I think the chances of us becoming famous are very low anyway.
That's what I think too.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
But well, cool, man. So thank you for sharing that, because while the audience might think that's just unnecessary, I feel like it's a crucial element to our relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it sort of reflects upon your ability to persevere through all odds and reinvent yourself. And that's something I admire about you. You also work in language. You've been working on learning Spanish.
Claro.
Yeah. Habla un poco sobre esto. Tell us a little bit about this.
¿En español o en inglés?
Lo que quieres. Whatever you want.
Okay. Creo que sería mejor hacerlo en español porque es la prueba de que he aprendido.
That's right. But is it okay if I translate it for the viewers who don't speak Spanish?
Sí, claro.
Okay. So to translate, I think he said, can you say it one more time in Spanish? I'm sorry.
Creo que sería mejor hacerlo en español
Perfect.
porque es la prueba de que hablo español.
Yes. So Randy says, I
Un
think it
poco.
would be best for me to speak about this in Spanish because it's the test or the proof of me learning Spanish.
Exacto.
Exactly.
Um, Estudié francés
I
en
studied
la
French
prepa,
in primary school,
pero no aprendí nada.
but I don't remember any of it.
Y durante COVID no tuve nada por hacer.
And during COVID, I had nothing to do. Wait, can you tell me what this is in French? You have to at least remember this.
No, no sé.
It's so close to English.
Banana?
No, that's Spanish. Le banan.
Le
The
banane.
banana.
I literally remember no French. It took me a week to pass my French ability in Spanish, and I can read a little bit of French now, but only as a result of having learned Spanish and them being similar.
Well, reading French is completely different than speaking French too,
That's true.
because it sounds
Yeah.
nothing like it looks, right?
Sí.
Okay, continue.
Or we.
Continue. Okay, look at this guy. He speaks 3 languages and plays Super Smash with his feet.
Yeah. Continúo. Ok. Sí, creo que es una historia de autoeducación.
I think it's a story of higher
Autoeducación.
education.
Self-education.
Self-education.
En contra educación tradicional.
Against traditional education, or
Exacto.
compared to, yeah, yes.
Porque,
Amen, man. I love anti-traditional education.
Sí, porque mi habilidad en francés es .1 y mi habilidad en español es 100 veces más.
Yes, because my ability in French is
0.1.
0.1. Yeah, 0.1. And then my ability in Spanish, you confuse me, man. You have to know I'm not good at math. I didn't study engineering. My ability in Spanish is something like 10 times that, right?
100 times
Oh, 100
more,
times
yeah.
more. Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Okay. Y lo haré rápido el resto, pero básicamente estudié español obsesivamente por un año en casa y en internet. Ya aprendí mucho más que en la escuela.
Eso es la verdad. So basically, he said he studied way better at home and he learned a lot more at home than he ever learned in school.
Because I was more motivated.
Yeah.
And more bored.
Yeah, and more bored. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
and
it's been cool. It's been cool living in San Diego because you actually, I think that was another bad choice, was choosing French, because it's like the second language of California, basically, is Spanish. And like, maybe if you lived in Canada or something, French would make sense to learn. But it's just like, when you learn a language that no one around you speaks, you have to go out of your way so much to learn it. And I feel like if you have to go out of your way to learn it, then you either won't learn it or you won't maintain it.
That's true. That's true. To
but,
be fair, though, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, go ahead.
Well, to be fair, though, like if you wanted to just disappear into another country, you'd blend in much better in France than you would in Mexican or Spanish-speaking countries. Unless you're like Argentinian, maybe you could be like a German Argentinian, or you know, there. I've seen pictures of Mexicans down south that also look like you, but they're like Hutterites or something like that. But
well, I am partly French, so I guess that makes sense.
Oh, there you go.
My middle name is French, Derux. Derux.
Whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a story of self-education being better than school education. And when you're actually motivated to learn, you learn. And when other people make you want to learn, like I should have learned French, but I didn't feel like it. I wasn't mature enough to think it was a good idea at the time. So I didn't.
Yeah. It's so true. Like learning that's forced upon you is much harder to embrace, right?
Yeah.
They even call it. They have a word for it. They call it an oppositional identity. You can develop. It's like if people keep cramming stuff down your throat, eventually you're just like, I hate all this. I'm not taking any of it, even if it's good
That's
for you.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that. I think, people have known bugs, I would say, and maybe that's one of them. But
Yeah.
you just kind of have to, it's hard to change how we are, so you just kind of have to know about the bugs and then work around them.
Right. That's one thing I admire too about like certain nations, like the Japanese. Like they learned how to become American better than Americans could be American, and that's how they fought back. Because to learn from somebody who tried to destroy you, to learn somebody who could care less for you, right? America, we did Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? We literally
Mhm.
we hurt that country very badly, but they said, "You know what? At least we can learn one thing from our enemies. Those guys did a couple things right, and we're going to do those things even better." And then look at them, like
Yeah,
they had that huge boom where they were actually, it was an economic war against us, and they were winning for a time. So
that is interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, be defeated once, but not twice in the same
right.
way or whatever.
Yeah, it's like you can learn from your enemy. I mean, if you can't learn from your enemy, you're just going to lose, right?
Yeah,
But
well,
yeah,
especially if you lost the first one.
yeah, exactly. You're just going to get
Yeah,
further pushed down into the ground. Yeah. And I guess that comes into play with Super Smash Bros. Too.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, honestly, I never intended to be able to be good with my feet. I was just like, I shouldn't play with my hands. It's not important. I shouldn't like destroy my future for playing video games. But I would really like to participate and not just watch my friends play. So
Yeah.
I just started doing it in order to participate. But then honestly, after doing it, I could like anyone could do it. It's not actually that hard to learn with your feet.
So
It's
there,
just that no one like it's hard to want to learn with your feet. If you wanted to learn with your feet, you could. In fact, your brother Michael started learning on my apparatus and he learned so much faster than I did. He just didn't finish it because like he didn't have the motivation, right? Because his hands weren't messed up.
wow. So you're saying there's hope for us defective non-foot players?
Yeah, you
Okay.
could absolutely learn, and I think you would learn faster than I did.
Wow. Well,
Yeah,
speaking of learning fast, I wanted to move on to the next topic. So, you did go into a business venture with my brother.
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
It's been harder than learning the amount of Spanish that I know for sure. But yeah, I've been trying to start companies or different companies basically since my hands have been better. I knew that I always wanted to do it, but back in college, I was like, I only have a certain amount of computer time, and I can't do a company and college on the computer, so I'm just going to do college. But then when I got better after college, then I've been trying to do that, and I've done a lot of very much failed ventures, but the one that has had moderate success and continues very slowly, but continues to this day, is called DragonSkin. And I'm doing it with your brother, Michael, and also with our other friend from college, Bulos. And DragonSkin is a company designed to make stingray resistant surfing booties. Because basically in San Diego and in other parts of the world that are tropical, not all parts of the world, but tropical beach places for the
Yeah.
most part have stingrays.
Right.
And stingrays are like a little circular fish that basically frequently lives, depending on the time of the year, basically lives where people hang out and play in the water, and
Right.
they're bottom feeders, so they hunt
Wow.
down there and they hide in the
That's
sand and you
crazy.
can't see
It's
them and you step
crazy.
on them.
They're coming for
And
you.
when you, yeah, well, it feels like that, but to them it probably feels like
We're coming for them.
yeah, because they're just living and then we're coming and stepping on them basically. And
Yeah.
apparently it even like usually kills them when we step on them.
Dang.
But it's just not a good situation for either party, because if they could avoid us, they would.
Right.
And if we could avoid them, we would.
Yeah.
But we can't see each other, so we don't know how to do it.
Right.
But basically, you step on a stingray, and then its natural defense mechanism is it has a venomous spine. Here, I've got one on my desk.
That's awesome.
Not sure if it's going to focus, but it's basically like a serrated bone needle arrowhead. And then it's in a skin pouch that also has venom. And the venom isn't, well, I mean, depending on how much and where it is, I guess it could be deadly, but it's not typically Like people don't really die from getting stung by stingrays. I know Steve Irwin did, but that's a very different type of stingray in a very different place.
Yeah.
But it basically just hurts really bad. I've never been stung by a stingray, but I've heard it's incredibly painful. I am a surfer, so I'm trying to avoid it for myself. And I've heard that it's kind of like someone banging your foot with a hammer for like the next couple of hours. The venom is like that painful.
Ouch.
And then there's a whole bunch of other bad stuff that can happen too. Like it can get infected and all that.
Yeah.
And honestly, getting stung in the grand scheme of things isn't that common. Like if you come to a beach in San Diego, it's not like you're going to get stung the first time you go out there. But if you like regularly go to the beach in San Diego for years, you pretty much will get stung.
Okay.
It's not like shark attacks. Shark attacks are like, I don't know. They're so infrequent that it's almost like you can just pretend that they'll never happen, and they won't.
Yeah, just swim faster than the next guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's another thing that I think about sharks, because they're already infrequent. But then I'm like, if there was a shark attack at this beach today, if there had been one, I would know about it. And there's 1,000 people on the beach. So even if there's guaranteed to be one
strength
today.
in numbers kind of thing.
Exactly.
Just don't be the slow zebra.
And apparently they get scared away from lots of people anyway. So it's probably less likely when it's crowded. But anyway, that's kind of a tangent. Existing surfing booties, you would think that they protect you from stingray barbs, because usually people step on them, they get stung on the foot. But they basically don't. I mean, they do a little bit. They're better than wearing nothing, but like they don't protect very much. And basically the reason they don't is it's very difficult to make footwear that is wearable in the ocean and also puncture resistant, because wearable footwear in the ocean needs to be really tight to your foot so it doesn't drag. And tight things typically need to be stretchy because everyone's foot is a different shape. And stretchy things are not puncture resistant.
Yeah.
So
like balloons.
Yeah. So we've been working on that. Originally a problem for ourselves, but then it's kind of grown into more than that. We've been working on it for 3 or 4 years now. And the first year was prototyping, catching stingrays, testing. Then after that, we sold pairs that we made by hand. And they were stingray resistant, but they kind of fell apart. And also we were just testing if people would buy them, I guess.
Yeah.
In order to justify further investment, which we should have done at the very beginning, but we didn't. But we learned more about business as we went. And people did buy them. We sold about a dozen pairs. And then we started trying to get them manufactured overseas for the most part, although we have talked to a few people in Tijuana to try to do it there.
Okay.
And that's been an incredibly difficult and painfully slow process because the communication is not there. I don't speak Chinese. They speak English, but not perfectly. But it's also hard to do because you don't want to visit them because it's hard to visit them, and every iteration is like months for them to do a sample because they're busy doing their bulk orders. They don't want to take time away to set up for the sample.
Yeah, they got to
watch it's been
their bottom line.
Sorry, go ahead.
They got to watch their bottom line, right?
Yeah, I heard that. I listened to another podcast actually. How I built this, interviewing the people who started Zero Shoes, and it sounds very similar to our story. Basically, they said it's tough to get into manufacturing initially because the manufacturer is losing money on you.
Yeah.
It's a bet on making money in the future. They only make money at quantity when you become big, but making the samples is like, they're just like losing out on money that they could be making because they have to all the time in the setup, and it's difficult.
Gotcha.
But here we are 2 or 2.5 years later, and we're just about to place an order for 500 manufactured ones. We received 300 like a year ago, but then perfect storm of changes and low quality from the Alibaba manufacturers we found resulted in the zippers exploding right when you put them on.
Shoot.
But we've found a better manufacturer, and we are possibly even today actually going to order 500 of them. And then, a lot of the business has been waiting on that. So when we've had our website up those intervening years in between the time when we sold them handmade and now, and we have several thousand people on our interest list, which is like not like so many people that like you're set for life financially if you sold them, but it's also like not like 3 people and then you're like, we should work on a different idea. So
Yeah.
and I'm excited to see where it goes after we actually start selling them, after we get user feedback and improve what I'm sure is bad in the design. And
sure. Yeah. But how exciting, right? I mean, like you're creating a solution to a problem that other people like yourselves who love to surf deal with. Eventually they're going to come into contact with a Stingray. And I hope, hopefully this next shipment is satisfactory, that you can sell plenty and improve and grow.
Ojalá que sí.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting.
Hopefully so.
Yeah. And if people wanted to buy some of these booties, maybe I can put a link in the description. Would that be fine?
Yeah, it'd be mydragonskin.com.
Okay.
But I can give you the link as well.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, people can find them online. If there's other surfers out there who want to avoid getting stung. I got to see some of the tests that you'd done. I remember you'd come up with a particular device to be able to make sure it withstood a certain amount of force, right?
Yeah.
And that was basically your way of making sure that it would be Stingray proof, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we measured Stingray sting force, and then we made a pendulum to replicate that Stingray sting force so that we can do a lot of the testing at home with the barbs. That's the reason that I have a barb on my desk. You can buy them online. I think they come from fishermen who are like eating the stingrays basically, and then it's extra barbs.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of testing on the pendulum for 90% of the way iteration, and then once we were happy with something, then we went out and actually put it on a fake foot and got stingrays in a bucket and touched them with it to induce them to sting it.
Yeah. Wow. So that's cool, man. So that's one of your irons in the fire. Do you have any other passion projects? I know you were working on something with Spanish to try to create a language learning application. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I do have a lot of other passion projects, but one big thing I've learned in engineering and projects throughout my life is that making anything actually work is like 100,000 times harder than you think it is. And I have so many ideas that I have come to the realization that I'm really only going to be able to complete like less than 0.1% of them in my lifetime. But the one you're talking about, I called Read Between the Lines, and it was basically recutting Spanish podcasts. I really like the podcast Radio Ambulante, and recutting it so that they would say something in Spanish and then they would pause silence for me to repeat it, because I felt like I learned a ton from Pimsleur in the car, which is like talk and repeat.
Yeah.
But Pimsleur is only very low level, and then it just stops because they have to create the content manually.
Right.
And Radio Ambulante is like a dope podcast. It's like Spanish NPR basically. And the stories are just interesting and the level is much more advanced. So when you're at that level, then you learn more from it. But I felt that when I just listen, I don't learn as quickly as when I have to listen and repeat.
Okay.
So I was trying to make some software to take existing podcasts and then transform it into something with silence for you to repeat it.
Right. That's awesome.
And I did end up using it myself, my like hacky MVP version. Other people didn't seem like they were that interested in it to me. So I dropped it and started working on other things. But I still use the one that I made myself sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. But even just the idea, I mean, especially nowadays, like the hot topic is AI, which I think it's been a little overdone actually. But the idea that, you can generate this concept of, hey, let's make this language thing that gives us a pause and then repeats it in another language. And then to lay that out across all the languages, eventually I've seen like Duolingo did a pretty good job. Again, like Pimsleur making a basic, entry level language learning platform, but just like seeing how the further we get into using this technology, the faster we're going to be able to teach others and share it and acquire it, right?
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be done out there in the ways of software that helps people learn languages faster. Like I can't even imagine trying to learn a language in the days before the internet.
Yeah.
Like you go to the library and listen to recorded tapes or something. But I mean, the internet lets you literally talk to anyone in the world.
They had cassette tapes.
Really?
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
yeah, it's just like, it's a terrible method of
That's all we
learning
had, though.
compared to like being
Yeah.
able to talk to, like, one big way that I learned was through a site called Preply. And it's basically Uber for connecting people who want to, like, language students and
Okay.
language teachers.
That
So
sounds
my
great.
language teacher was named Itzel, and she lived in near Mexico City.
Yeah.
And we would connect for like an hour, and I'd pay her through Preply, and then I would just talk for like 45 minutes of the hour, and she would correct me every like 2 seconds.
That's hilarious.
And yeah, I learned like most of my talking ability, I think I learned from Pimsleur and then from that.
Yeah. Pero ahora tú hablas mejor de mí. Now you speak better than me.
Sí, pero tú hablas bastante bien.
Gracias. Yeah, I like to. That's the problem with me sometimes. I talk too much.
Yo también.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to talk too much more. I want to enjoy, let the audience enjoy a little bit more of your story. One of the other questions I had, brother, was what would you say to a young person looking to get into some of the things you went into?
I guess it depends on if you're trying to get into traditional engineering day job route or trying to start a company, because I'm doing both. And I think my advice for those has some overlap, but not a lot.
Yeah. So maybe could we start with the traditional engineering job?
Yeah. I think that you should get good grades in high school, go to a college, maybe don't worry too much about college prestige, but it seems like many jobs won't hire you without a college degree.
Yeah.
Which I have a very cynical view about, but I think it's the reality, and you have to game the system in order to get these kinds of jobs.
Right.
And then you should go to college. If you want to go to graduate school, you should get good grades. And if you don't, then you should get less good grades, and you should focus more on internships and clubs, or engineering clubs, because those are where they actually teach you how to do engineering.
Yeah.
But I basically thought that so I am recommending going to college, basically, and then possibly master's and not PhD, unless the idea of doing a PhD, like, you love it. I think it's a bad financial decision to do a PhD, but like it could be good if that's really what you want to do.
Okay.
And then for the actual engineering that you do, because I don't think college will prepare you for actual engineering, I think you should self-teach.
Yeah.
And learn from others. I learned a lot in internships, because in internships they bring you in and have you do actual engineering, and then you learn it.
Yep.
Or like a self-taught programmer, which I experimented with a lot of different ways, but the best way I found was to watch YouTube tutorials to get going, and then start your own project and post on forums when you're confused and have people tell you how your design is bad and redo it.
Yeah.
But basically, I think you should go to college for the piece of paper that you will attach to your job application that will then not have you be thrown out.
It's so sad. Yeah.
It's almost like, from the hiring perspective for companies, I think there are so many people applying for these jobs that they're just like, they literally don't have time to go through the applications. So they're like, what's something we can do that's very low effort that will cut out, most of the candidates who are less qualified, maybe not always, not good for the position, but they literally just don't have time to review them all. And I think a very common one, at least nowadays, I hope that it becomes less common, but is, do you have a college degree in some form of engineering for an engineering job? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think what they actually taught us in college is like, here's like 100 times more theoretical knowledge than you could ever possibly use in your lifetime. You'll end up using 1%. And by the time you use the 1%, you will have forgotten it, and you'll have to go back and relearn it.
Yeah.
And they don't teach you how to make like trade-offs in design. Like, for example, a big thing in designing the Stingray booties was like the trade-off between puncture resistance and flexibility.
Okay.
Like comfort and how effective it actually is at preventing stingrays.
Yeah.
Because at first we tried to make it, basically 100% stingray resistant, and we did that. And then we gave it to a surf instructor to put on his foot and wear it in the water. And surf instructors are particularly motivated because they get to have this, because they get stung way more than regular people because they're walking and it's their job. And he literally tried it in the water and then never talked to us again and like ghosted us because I think he was so unhappy with what we made him.
That's hilarious.
So then,
so what, was that version 1? Was that version 1?
That was like version 200. I don't know. And now we're on version 1000 or something. I don't even. It depends on how lightly you say the versions. But literally, like I can make a prototype in a day. It's just not a good prototype. So 3 years. I don't know.
Wow.
But yeah, I do think if you want to get a traditional job, you should go to college. I think the other good reason to go to college is for the social experience and the people that you meet. Like both Michael and Bulos, my co-founders for DragonSkin, I lived with freshman year.
Yeah.
A lot of the people in my freshman year suite were really smart people that I never would have met if I didn't go to college, and I wouldn't have the same relationship with them if I hadn't gone to college.
Right.
But I do think that's changing a little bit potentially with COVID, because I think that COVID has shown that remote work is like very effective in some ways, or in some industries, but I think that it potentially very socially damaging in the college experience, at least, because I know one brother of a friend basically who went to college during COVID, and like his freshman and sophomore year were in college, and it's been really hard for him to make friends. Whereas my experience was I went and, then you make like 10 friends for life or something in your college experience. And that, doesn't sound like a huge number, but I don't know. I don't have very many friends. So that's like, or not very many super close friends. So I think you go to college for the piece of paper and the social experience.
Okay. Yeah. That's good advice. And what would you say for the people who want to go the non-traditional route, who are kind of like, hey, I think I can build a business from scratch even without going to college?
Read the Lean Startup, read the Mom Test, read 80/20 Sales and Marketing. Okay. Those are my 3 favorite books.
Sweet, man. I'm going to put those in the description too. Yeah.
Okay. There are a lot of business books I've read, but those ones are like, to use a reference to 80/20 Sales and Marketing. Those are the 20% of the books that will give you 80% of the return, I think.
Yeah.
And just self-educate, try things, try to find people who are successful or who have been successful in doing the kind of business that you would want to do.
Yeah.
And then try to learn from them. And I think probably the biggest thing I've learned is don't just start working on your idea, because taking it from an idea to a thing that works takes so long. And the likely scenario, if you do that, is that you'll take it to a thing that works and then no one will care about it because it was just the thing that you thought people would care about, but they don't.
Right.
So that's really what that's what the Lean Startup and the Mom Test are about. But the Lean Startup is about making MVPs, basically, which are like, it stands for minimum viable product. Okay. But it basically means make the crappiest version of your envisioned end goal that you possibly can.
Yeah.
In order to test whether or not people are interested at all in what you're making.
Right.
And the Mom Test is about, before you even do an MVP, talking to people who might potentially be representative of your one day future customers.
Yeah. And
not telling them that you have a business idea and not asking them if they would buy it, because the idea is if you ask your mom, if you say, hey mom, I have a good business idea, is it a good idea? She'll be like, yes,
go for it, son.
It's your family. Yeah. Exactly. But the idea is, if you don't tell them your idea and you ask them questions instead that relate to their view of the problem that you're trying to solve, then you might actually be able to learn whether or not they'd buy your product, potentially, if it existed. And then you can see if you're wasting your time, and you can basically use those to try to iterate to an idea that's really that's cared about by enough people, enough potential customers to be worth all the blood, sweat, and tears to actually make it a reality.
Right. So what I'm hearing for you, if I were to rephrase it in another way, is let your first prototype be imaginary, right?
Yeah,
Test it
I like that.
Test it on people in their minds before you have to actually go out there and physically catch a stingray, build a shoe, sew a zipper on it, and put it on a surfer instructor.
We totally didn't do this in our first business, and I think we ended up with one that doesn't have a high enough total addressable market, and also we spent way too much time making it before getting even any feedback that anyone would buy it.
Yeah.
I would say the summary in your words is first prototype is imaginary, second prototype is crappy.
Okay. I like that.
And then,
I like that
third
philosophy.
prototype is real. Or really, maybe more like the 101st prototype is real. But
there you go.
But the first two are the most important.
Yeah. Well, I think every great inventor has followed that trajectory too, though. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, look at Thomas Edison, right?
Yeah.
Even though he didn't create the light bulb, he just stole it off of Tesla. But
is that true?
Yeah, pretty much.
I didn't know that.
Conversation for another day. And I'm sure there's people out there who may disagree, but according to the documentary and the things that I've read, basically Tesla had these ideas, and then Edison got credited with them.
Interesting.
But what are you gonna do?
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always people out there who will disagree with any statement. For X, there are Y people out there who will disagree.
Exactly. Well, the last two questions I had for you were, if you were to sum up your purpose in life thus far, what would you say for you gives you meaning, gives you purpose?
I think thus far is a good addition, because I've definitely changed my mind about a lot of things that in the past, a lot of opinions that in the past I thought I would never change my mind about. Like believing in psychosomatic illness is a big one.
Yeah.
But that one was like rubbed in my face, so I didn't really have much other choice the way I see it. My purpose, I think that my purpose is to contribute to humanity, basically. It's kind of based in my conception of morality, and my conception of morality is that morality is, I guess for background, I believe in evolution. And I think that evolution has caused humans to have heavily individualistic tendencies, because if you don't have individualistic tendencies, then your genes won't survive, because if you just give away all your food, then you'll die and you won't pass on your genes, and the people that coveted their food will pass on more genes than you.
Yeah.
But I think that there's like a balancing factor to that, and that it's when people cooperate, they achieve more than the sum of their parts. Like if my ability to do things is one and your ability to do things is one, then when we work together, often if it's done right, we can achieve four. It's like the thing about economic specialization, and just the fact that problems are complicated, and like you can, you're good at things that I'm not, and vice versa, so we complement each other.
Yeah.
But so I think that humans have also evolved kind of an opposite tendency to individualism, and I think that that's morality. And basically I think that that is more about trying to get the human race's genes to survive, basically. And I think that those are like competing tendencies in our lives. And then I think there's like a weird in-between one that's like the tendency to try to help your family. And I think your family is in between, because your family shares some of your genetic material, but not all of it.
Right.
And your family is also much more likely to reciprocate if you help them. So like reciprocal altruism is like an interesting concept. Like I'll help you, but only if you help me. Like if you burn me once, I'll never help you again.
Right.
Like if you're a scammer, I'll never trust you again.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think all of those basically, I like to, in philosophy, I like to try to define the term before I argue about it. And then you just end up having the argument about the definition. And that's totally what happens when I talk to people about this without just monologuing. No one agrees with my definition, but I still think it's true. But yeah, so I think that morality is like the tendency of humans to act in the long-term interests of the human race. And I think that I should behave in a moral way, but really only because that's what I think the word should means, is like, how would you behave if you were acting morally? So I think my purpose is to further the human race.
That's a noble cause.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thank you for what you're doing to further the human race.
De nada.
Yeah. And I also want to congratulate you. I think you are a brilliant mind, and I appreciate all the work you're doing with my brother as well. But you are also the first. Thank you, bro. But you are also the first non-Christian interviewed on our podcast so far.
Oh, cool.
So thank you, because I didn't start this podcast off to only showcase Christian worldviews. I wanted to capture worldviews from all of my friends. There's the coolest people I know, and you're one of them.
Yeah.
And it's really good for people like me to get to hear other perspectives as well. And I do like how you defined it, in those terms of how describing how humans relate with each other. And I think it is really important for us to think about these concepts, whether people are religious or not, to come to some kind of a moral code, if you will. So it's encouraging and cool to hear about how you came to those conclusions.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. I feel like I agree that it's good for you to listen to my opinions that you disagree with, but I also think that it's good for me to listen to your opinions that I disagree with.
Thank you,
brother. Tit for tat.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool that you're doing this podcast. I think that I like how open-ended you've made the questions, and I think that even before you were doing this podcast, you kind of do this thing where you meet someone and then you immediately ask them 5 deep questions about their life, and then you listen to them wrapped for the next hour. And I think it's hard to do that. It's unusual, and it's hard to do that. I think usually when you ask people, like if I ask people big questions about life, then they start giving their opinion, and then the first thing I do is start disagreeing with them because I disagree. Funny. And I know you probably disagree with some of what I say, at least. Sure. But you do a very good job of legitimately being interested in what they have to say and like trying to learn from it. And I think you do that well, and that it's in line with the idea of this podcast.
Thank you, man. Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I'm hoping, through this, I'm hoping to get some of this polarization that's been happening just kind of like diminished, for people to see, hey, there's people out there who really do want to do good, no matter what their background is, no matter what their belief system or nationality or language is. At the end of the day, we're all just humans trying to make it, and I think we ought to care for each other. We ought to care about each other's opinions.
Yeah. I think that one interesting thing to me has been like in college I was in a philosophy club, and the philosophy club was like led by some Christian people. So most of the people in the club were Christian, but it wasn't a requirement. Yeah. But I thought one interesting thing for me is that although I and they and some other people in the club come at the conception of morality with like hugely different conceptions of what it is, often our like end result of what we think we should do in a situation is remarkably similar, which is like, that's very interesting to me, because if you start with totally different initial conditions then extrapolate it, I would imagine like, I'm advocating murdering everyone and you're not, or something that's like that. Not that it would be that specifically, but that it would be that different. But I think that it's not exactly the same, but it ends up being more similar in the applied terms than I would have expected, at least, with myself and the Christians that I've met. I mean, it could be very different in other parts of the world, different religions and different people, but that's been my experience.
That's pretty amazing though. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have to have you back. Maybe we'll have a philosophy focused discussion one of these days.
That could be fun, man.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Randy. It's been great having you, and thank you for joining the OJ podcast, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. That was the part where we just wave. Yeah, the queen wave. There we go. Right on, man. So yeah, or this one. That's my favorite.
Spock.
Live long and prosper.
Yeah.
Is this gangster Spock? This is like
I don't know.
disciplined Spock. This is when he was like a punk in high school. Cool. Well, thanks, man. Yeah, I'm gonna just stop recording, and then if you want to talk a little more, we can, or if you need to go, that's okay.
Sure.
Cool.